Historically, public space agencies have defined space exploration. As of now, in 2022, 77 countries have space agencies.
For the first sort of 50 years of NASA's existence, NASA was the customer and the private sector was the supplier.
Now, billionaires are fundamentally changing the public's relationship with space.
We've seen the rise of a lot of small companies and startups like ours that establishes a whole ecosystem.
And a booming space economy in Colorado and beyond is really starting to take off.
Moving manufacturing off of our planet, creating opportunity and future for everybody, that's what I want to see.
I'm Krajnovic.
And I'm Myrna James.
It's time to go behind the wings. So in this episode, we're going to explore the question, how is the growing space economy changing what's possible in space? To start, we talked with Phil McAllister, NASA's director of the Commercial Spaceflight Division for Space Operations.
When we first started talking about shifting some of the responsibility for low Earth orbit onto the private sector, I think there was definitely a sentiment within some parts of NASA that we were giving up something that was special and core to our mission. And over time, I think that sentiment has really reduced as people have realized that if we were always limited to NASA's budget for what we could do, we would always be somewhat constrained. For the first sort of 50 years of NASA's existence, we kind of interacted with the private sector one way, which is NASA was the customer and the private sector was the supplier. So we would write very detailed requirements, we would make all the decisions about the spacecraft or the transportation vehicle, and then we would hand those to the private sector and say, go build this. And we would be sort of in charge, we would make all the decisions, and we would own the resulting hardware. But today, what we found is the commercial space industry, which is an industry looking to sell not just to the federal government, but to other organizations and to other just consumers. When you have a thriving commercial space industry, it doesn't necessarily make sense for NASA to build everything from scratch. We can leverage the capabilities in the private sector. That's kind of what we mean by commercial space. And I think just within the last 10 years, these kind of partnerships have become possible.
Previously, the space industry has been very large company driven. You've got your large primes and government contractors, and that was how it was for 50 years. As technology has increased and as the price and cost of getting to space have decreased, that has enabled many more businesses that now can close their, financial model. You've seen the rise of a lot of small companies and startups like ours who see needs in the market and needs that the industry has, and we're able to meet them in ways that larger companies it might be more difficult to, and so that establishes a whole ecosystem of everything from single-person startups all the way up to 1,000-person companies.
Dylan Taylor, thank you so much for being here with us. You, I think, have more passion for space than anyone I've ever met. So you're currently the founder and chairman of Voyager Space Holdings. Tell us a little bit about the company.
Voyager Space is really purpose-built to help scale what we call new space, which is the innovative entrepreneurial sector of the space industry.
There's obviously a lot of collaboration in space, but what role does competition play?
Well, I think the market forces help, right? I mean, I think SpaceX was born out of competition with the Russian Soyuz rocket, with Boeing, with Lockheed, and because of that, they were able to attract third-party capital and invest and innovate. So I think it's really important. I think the market forces work. When space was purely a nation-state opportunity, you didn't see the level of innovation. We certainly didn't see rocket reusability. And now we even have things like launch as a service, where customers just simply pay to be inserted into a particular orbit. We are in a renaissance for the industry. The level of innovation is just shocking, and I expect more to come.
This is a graph of the investment totals in space. Just look at that graph. I mean, it's straight up practically. In the past 20 years, the global space economy it's grown from just over 1 billion to over 16 billion. That's huge.
Yeah, in investment in space, private space companies.
And then to get a sense of where this is going, this is looking at the future. Here we are, 2022, and the chart just goes straight up.
So the global space economy is expected to grow 4.5% in the next 25 years, and that's exponential growth, and it's not going to slow down anytime soon.
When you look at it like this, it makes it seem like we're really just at the beginning of things today.
Mm-hmm.
So we made our way to Lunar Outpost to learn how they're using technology originally developed by NASA to test for lunar dust to actually improve air quality here on Earth. Now that might sound a bit confusing, but we're going to talk to their CEO, Justin Cyrus, to learn exactly how.
My name's Justin Cyrus. I'm the CEO here at Lunar Outpost. It's been a very good past couple years for startups in the community, because now instead of just straight competition against the likes of some of the big names like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, or Boeing, they're looking at ways that they can work with small startups like Lunar Outpost and Outpost Environmental to innovate quicker and to not only bring value to the aerospace community and what we're doing out in cislunar space, but to find ways to bring that technology that costs a lot of money to create back here to Earth. So NASA spin-offs are technologies that originally were funded out of NASA or a part of a NASA program. And what these spin-offs are is commercial companies working with NASA to find ways to take this tech that folks have spent a lot of time and money on, and finding ways it can benefit life here on Earth.
So speaking specifically about the Canary sensor now, we actually have one of them right there behind you. What was the original application of the technology?
So the original application of the Canary sensor technology was actually to detect lunar dust. So it's called lunar regolith, and it's extremely fine dust. And it's harmful because of the chemical and geometric composition to not only humans, but robotic systems and space stations.
What was that technology transfer when you realized, okay, maybe this tech could be useful to improve life on Earth?
Some of the key core technology is detecting a particle and figuring out what's in that particle, or detecting just what's in a concentration of air. So what we do with the Canaries actually here on Earth, actually figure out what's in the air real time out in the field. One of the use cases that was highlighted by City and County of Denver was putting it next to schools. So figuring out how we can improve the air quality for kids in elementary school, middle school, and high school, and the effects of the study are still being seen today. We were able to collect real-time data, and air quality was worse than you would want it to be, especially for elementary age kids at some of these schools. So that's just a small sample of what City and County and Denver was able to do with the air quality data we collected. The first day we actually put a Canary on an oil and gas site, we found a methane leak within 7 minutes, and that leak was fixed within the first 2 hours. Whereas the historical way of doing it would have been months later until they found that leak. And at that point, thousands of liters of methane would have already been dumped into the atmosphere.
If you don't measure, you'll never know. And with the Canary sensor, it's just that extra layer of data.
I think that's very well said. If you don't measure, you will never know. And if you don't know, you can't fix it. And certainly that is what we're trying to accomplish by providing data not only to the companies, right, the oil and gas, the chemical processing, but also to the regulators so they can make sure the air we breathe is safe, healthy, clean. Because we have a lot of really cool tech that we're working on in space that can be brought here to Earth and applied in those markets. And what that strategy has allowed Lunar Outpost to do and accomplish is to reach some of our more ambitious goals of putting a rover on the moon, of making oxygen on Mars, while still driving profit, revenue, and having that strong near-term positive impact that can be seen from the Canary sensors.
There are thousands of spin-offs from NASA, many of them that we use every day.
Things like sunglasses, rechargeable batteries, even sneakers.
Hundreds of NASA spin-offs have come directly from the International Space Station. We spoke with former astronaut Scott Kelly, who spent nearly a year on the ISS.
I think there are things we get from the space program that are valuable to our life on Earth. If we didn't have a space program, we wouldn't have these cool cell phones in our pockets that we look at all the time. So there are a lot of those kind of technical things we get from it.
The space program has created great benefits in terms of technology spin-offs for use on Earth. I mean, one of the most obvious is actually solar power, which some people think will be our salvation from global warming. Solar power was developed as a really usable technology for use on spacecraft, because if there's nothing further off-grid than a spacecraft. And my little company has also spun stuff off. We were interested in making fuel on Mars that required capturing CO2 out of the atmosphere, and a number of other technologies. And it developed our gas capture technologies for a number of purposes, one of which has been to capture gas being flared by oil wells so that they could be trucked off to market instead of being flared. And another was capturing CO2 out of fermentation vats so that breweries could use the CO2 from their own fermenters instead of having to buy CO2 from industrial sources while venting their own CO2 to the atmosphere.
Here we are at the Denver Beer Company. We're going to learn about tech transfer from NASA, and they're creating technology where they're learning about resources that we have and how to use them here on Earth. So you're wondering, space, beer, how do they come together? We're about to find out.
When the beer's fermenting, there isn't really a great way for small craft breweries to capture that CO2 until Earthly Labs invented this CC machine. And so they licensed this NASA technology, which allows us to capture the CO2 during the fermentation process, bottle it up, and then we can reuse that CO2 later in the process, or sell it, or do whatever we want with it.
All right, so let's go check it out.
Okay, let's go check it out.
Great.
We've installed some piping that pipes the CO2 into the CC machine, where it's filtered, cleaned, cooled down, and compressed, and then put into a big 750-pound container. It tells us how much CO2 it's captured, the pressures, the temperatures, and everything that we need to know to run it.
Our third partnering business came in, and actually an indoor agricultural business who needs CO2 for the production of plants. So by partnering Denver Beer Co., who generates CO2, with another business who utilizes CO2, we were able to get through the pilot program. It was wildly successful. Really what we hope to see is a snowball effect, that people look to this as an example that other breweries can say, I should be capturing my CO2 as well.
Space has limited resources, but I guess our planet does too.
Sort of like you can't really ship things to the ISS all the time, or to the moon, or to Mars. So they need many, many ways to utilize resources that are already there. So that's what the in situ resource utilization really is.
So thinking about this increase in public-private partnership, we've talked a lot about the startup side, but what does it enable NASA to focus on?
The public-private partnerships not only allows the aerospace community to reach these business plans that wouldn't otherwise be possible, but it also allows NASA to reach far greater goals than they could otherwise. A great example is the Artemis program. Getting humans to the moon on the budget that NASA currently has is not possible, it's not feasible without the public-private partnerships that have been put in place. But in addition to that, NASA is the cutting edge of space agencies around the world, right? They're looking at not only getting to the moon, but further getting onto Mars and exploring other planetary bodies in our solar system, and with the James Webb Telescope, many solar systems beyond our galaxy that would not otherwise be possible if they weren't working with the commercial industry.
By being able to shift some of this responsibility and have the private sector pick up some of these costs, we can go further, faster. And I think there's always going to be a role for NASA. That's our job, is to push the bounds of exploration where you don't necessarily see an economic potential. It's really just been over in the last 15 years that we've seen these very, very successful partnerships. And now, particularly with the Crew program, we have seen all kinds of benefits from that. Just within the last 12 months, we've seen an all-private mission just to orbit, the Inspiration 4 mission, which was really remarkable, first time in history. And now today, we have 4 private astronauts on the International Space Station, living and working in space on the ISS, another thing that is a historical first. And I really do think we are at an inflection point with human spaceflight, and it's really about to take off.
Skip. I'm Cray. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Let's talk about space.
Yep, sounds good.
Let's do it. We're almost in this new era, this new space economy. There's more private companies than ever. They're collaborating with national space agencies. How has that impacted space law?
Well, a couple of things that are happening now. I represent a private astronaut who's going up. It's a SpaceX flight up and back, and NASA hosts the private astronauts, and a company down in Houston called Axiom Space put it together. It was really a first of a kind contract. You can imagine a lot of legal issues associated with sending a private person up into space for 10 days. You know, this isn't a suborbital flight of 6 or 8 minutes. This is 10 days up in space.
Thanks to our SpaceX team for getting you there. My thanks to NASA for hosting us, and to the entire crew. You know, we've been talking about this history-making mission for a long time.
So you've got private astronauts going up now to the International Space Station, and you've got NASA planning for commercial space stations before the end of this decade.
The ISS is getting old, and we would like to retire it by 2030. That is NASA's policy right now. So the good thing is that gives us a little bit of time. We are currently working with 4 partners to design, develop, and hopefully deploy prior to 2030 their own commercial space stations. And the long-term vision, I believe, at NASA is that I will be able to just buy a ticket, just like anybody else, and go up to a destination in space, do my work, and come back down.
Right now, we are on contract with NASA for a commercial destination free flyer contract to start developing this commercial space station. We're actually teamed with Blue Origin, and we're developing this space station, and we're calling it Orbital Reef. Think of it as a business park in space. Businesses come in, you provide the ecosystem, the power, the modules, the research facilities or the manufacturing facilities, tourist facilities, media, filmmaking, all of that kind of stuff. You provide the logistics and the transportation. Basically go to a company and say, what business do you want to do in space? We'll take care of the space part.
So when we think about another space station in the future, there's going to be different ways to get there, I'm sure, and one of them is Dream Chaser, product of Sierra Space, and that's really your project, right? That's your current project that you're working on.
In matter of fact, 24/7 production on the first vehicle right now. We plan to fly first quarter of 2023.
Oh my gosh. Well, we have one here, so
I know.
let's go look at it.
Looking at all the airplanes I flew, and then ones I didn't get to fly. I flew that one, I've flown that one, I've flown that, I've flown that, I've flown this guy. I've flown one of those too, yeah. So the Dream Chaser is a what's called a lifting body spacecraft. It's what we're working on, it's what we're building right now that we intend to fly in early 2023. What it is a lifting body spacecraft. And what that means is most airplanes, the wings provide the lift. I think most people know that. But in this particular vehicle, it's the body of the spacecraft itself that provides the lift, and only a little bit comes from those wings. So it looks like a mini space shuttle, right? So it's designed to launch on a rocket, fly up in orbit, rendezvous, dock, free flight, whatever you want to do on orbit, orbiting satellite, research platform. Then we enter, and when we enter, we see very, very high heating temperatures as we slow down, up to 3,000 degrees. That's why it's a blunt body. And then in the end, it comes down and it lands like an airplane. And so what I want is I want us, and quite frankly the whole world, to realize that commercial vision where space travel is routine. Multiple people going, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people working in space. I want to walk into a classroom as an astronaut and say, big deal. You know, half of our parents have gone to space.
Right,
Wouldn't that be awesome?
I think it's going to happen.
It will happen.
Yeah.
And we're doing everything we can to make it happen as soon as possible.
This was all kind of theoretical, even only 4 years ago. And now suddenly it's real, right? You've been to space already.
Going to space was life-changing. It really was. And as much as I told myself I shouldn't have expectations going into it, I really did. And those expectations were high, and they were just completely smashed. I mean, it was so much more profound and transformational than even I had hoped. So you're in the capsule about 35 to 40 minutes. from the time they put you in to the time they take you out. So you're on the pad, and you would think you would be terrified, and you would think you would be scared. At least I thought I would be, and I really wasn't. So then you get to countdown, right? T-minus 10, which is like the classic space, 10, 9, 8.
7, 6, 5, 4, command engine start, 2.
Well, huge congratulations to all 6 crew. They have crossed that Kármán line and they became official astronauts.
You get to space and they do main engine cutoff, and then you're kind of floating in your chair, but you're held back from your harness. And then they do what they call capsule separation. But then you're able to unbuckle.
Cue the astronauts to unbuckle their harnesses and start floating around the capsule.
They are in 0G, they've practiced for this, and now it's really happening.
I had the privilege of going to the window and I turned myself upside down. And I did that intentionally to sort of disrupt my orientation of up and down. I looked out the window, I gasped. You're seeing the Earth from space, totally transformational, extraordinary. And then from there, you get back in your seat. That's quite important, because what's going to happen is as you go falling back down to Earth, you hit the atmosphere. And then you come on down, and then the first thing that happens is your drogue parachutes open. Those basically guide and settle everything down. Then you have the main parachutes deploy. Then once you land, they give the crew a private moment to huddle and hug each other and just bask in the experience that we just had together. And then they open the capsule door, and you're greeted by hundreds of press and your family and loved ones. It is shocking how much we were able to get done in 2021. The technologies have matured. I think I was number 606 human to go to space. I'd like to have 606 humans per year go to space. And I don't think we're too far away from that. I think that'll happen in this decade.
With that in mind, you started Space for Humanity a few years ago. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Space for Humanity was founded with really 2 primary notions. One is that we need to democratize access to space. It can't be a billionaire boys club. It can't be exclusively North American or white or anything. It's got to be human. It's got to be human endeavor. And then the second core principle was the notion that space is a tool for transformation, right? It's a lot of things: technical challenge, investment opportunity, but it's primarily a tool for transformation. It's run by a terrific leader named Rachel Lyons.
It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Let's go.
All right, I'm excited.
Part of the original mission was to make space accessible to anyone.
We have entered, just over the past few years, this new era in space exploration, and this new era in space exploration is very much being led by the commercial companies. Up until 2021, we had 8 people go to space commercially, ever. And in 2021, we had more than 20 people go. What the numbers are saying right now is that in the next decade, 10,000 people or more will have been to space. And this can't just be for the ultra wealthy right now. The potential of this is much too big. And just in this past year, it opened up to so many people.
Organizations like Space for Humanity are making it possible for anyone to apply to go to space. So it's really, ideally, eventually, not just for the wealthy.
Just in the past couple of years, we've had so many firsts when it comes to who's going to space and how they get there. People like Eric Ingram with different abilities, whether physical or mental, whatever it is, these are people that before never would have gone to space. And now with Mission Astro Access, they're learning things they never would have thought of before.
I applied to be an astronaut twice, knowing full well I would not be accepted. Imagine how many people aren't applying to be astronauts because they don't think they can meet the minimal requirements. As a species, we're at the very beginning of human spaceflight. And when you're at the beginning of something, it's the easiest time to design for things. And so Astro Access was founded to make sure that anyone can go to space when that opportunity presents itself. And so we flew our first parabolic flight in October of 2021, where we took a plane and we did some parabolas where we were able to experience microgravity and lunar gravity and Martian gravity, and able to test some awesome technologies and ideas we had for making space more accessible to everyone. I think what you're seeing with commercial launch companies and commercial space stations and all that is more opportunities for that larger set of the human race to be able to finally go.
Truly believe it. I know it's cliche, but you got to see it to be it. I mean, I know I didn't have that to see. And so by me being the first, maybe that'll make some other little kids say, hey, I don't have to be an astronaut, I could be a suit tech. There's space for everyone. It really is. And I truly believe that. I mean, I'm a prime example of it.
Startups are changing accessibility and sustainability in space, and even what it means to be an astronaut.
After half a century, NASA has plans to return to the moon.
The Orion spacecraft is the vehicle that will take them to the moon.
While other players in the space industry set their eyes on Mars.
Clearly the real objective was Mars, and it's where the future is. It's the planet that has on it all the materials needed to support not only life, but human civilization.
Each breakthrough brings humanity one step closer to becoming a multi-planetary species, exploring further than we've ever gone before.
I think ultimately the Artemis program is really just about humans' enduring drive to explore. Hopefully through the Artemis program and through Orion, we'll unlock some secrets to the universe.
I'm Krajnovic.
And I'm Myrna James.
It's time to go behind the wings.
In this episode, we're going to explore the question, back to the moon or straight to Mars? It's not the first time we've been to the moon, but this time it's going to be different.
It's been over half a century, and it will be different. It's about going back for good to, set up a lunar base, the cislunar economy, a gateway. There's still a lot to learn.
It's really incredible. Artemis is NASA's plan to put people back to the moon and possibly be a base to go to Mars.
To start off, we talked with Mars Society founder Dr. Robert Zubrin, who's been thinking about pushing the limits of space exploration since he was a kid. Why is space exploration important, and how did you first get started?
Why is space important, and how did I get into it? I was 5 when Sputnik flew, and while the adults may have been terrified of Sputnik, I was delighted with it, because what Sputnik said to me was this was going to be true. This was the future, going to move into space, and I wanted to be part of it. It reflects a child's delight with the possibility of an exciting and amazing future. That is what we need. We need an exciting, amazing, lively, optimistic future. If we can expand into space, then we can all understand that there's no reason to kill each other fighting over provinces if by working together we can open up planets.
Welcome to Lockheed Martin. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Kids are unique in that they just have this innate curiosity and wonder and sense of exploring. It's something that we sometimes lose as we become adults. They walk outside, they're the first to look up at the sky and to point out the moon. They just want to ask why. They just want to explore and understand things and see what's next. And I think on us as adults, that's part of our job, is to keep fostering that sense of curiosity and that wonder. I'm Heather McKay. I'm the Engineering Development Senior Manager on the Orion program. Astronauts have been to the moon before on the Apollo program, but really that was just the initial step when it comes to exploration. There have been many famous explorers in the world. You think about Lewis and Clark, Magellan. And just imagine if they turned around at the first obstacle or even the first island that they found. And that's kind of where we're at with space exploration. The Apollo astronauts were great explorers, and Artemis plans to really pick up where they left off.
The plans to go back to the moon are ambitious. Everything they want to build there, the infrastructure on the moon, is going to take a lot of launch capabilities.
Yeah, it's a lot of mass, it's a lot of capacity, and the early rockets, they had trouble even just reaching that escape velocity, right? How fast you have to be going to escape the gravitational pull of an object. And this plan just takes that to the next level. You're not just launching people, you're launching all the infrastructure to build a permanent base on the moon. It takes some big rockets, like this one. We've gotten in touch with Tori Bruno. He's the CEO at United Launch Alliance. They're building the upper stage that's going to take humans back to the moon for the first time in half a century. You know, we'll meet him at the Mission Control Center. I think he can tell us what it's all about.
Last time we went to the moon to explore it briefly, to go there a few times, and then we stopped. This time we're going back to stay. I'm Tori Bruno, the President and CEO of United Launch Alliance, and for the balance of our time together, I'm your personal rocket scientist. Big differences since the last time we went in the Apollo program, and mostly in the upper stages. So today we can fly much more complicated missions. When that Saturn V went to the moon the first time, it was a big deal that the third stage with its J2 engine could actually burn twice after a short coast. Now we can do lots and lots of burns. We can do long multi-hour coasts in between, and when we put that together with the tremendous computing power we can put on a rocket today, we can take more mass there, we can go faster, it's safer for the crew. So those two big technologies, the advanced upper stage and these powerful, powerful computers, I mean, your watch has got as much computing power, if not more, as we went to the moon with the first time. Imagine what we can do now.
In Greek mythology, Apollo had a twin sister. Her name was Artemis. And this program is named after Artemis, the goddess of the moon. And it's apropos, given the time, Artemis and the Orion spacecraft will carry the first woman and the first person of color to walk on the moon. We are the Artemis generation. With the Artemis program, NASA plans to build a sustained human presence there. And the moon has so many interesting things. It's got interesting geology and craters from when the universe was first created. It has water ice that we can use for future fuel and propellant on future missions. And ultimately, it's this proving ground where we can test out our equipment and our technologies and our tools to prepare us to send humanity deeper into space.
This is very much an important moment in human history because it's going to change the destiny of our species. As we sit here on Earth today, we're living on a planet with limited resources, and we're putting a lot of attention and our thought into how do we live a smaller footprint to extend the inevitable consumption of our planet's resources and the collapse of our society and our civilization. This changes all of that future for us. There is incredible natural resources on the moon and on the asteroids or near-Earth objects, as we call them, that are within easy reach of the moon in this greater space we call cislunar space. There is such an abundance that it literally defies human imagination. And when we are able to tap that, it changes everything for us. A post-scarcity human future is what we're looking at. You know, putting a 50-story building on a launch pad that is 90% high explosive to just break the bounds of gravity, right? Defying the tyranny of our planet's gravitational force to hold us down is impossible, and yet we do it all the time. It's become routine. When we look to the potential future for humanity and for the entire globe that exists through the moon, through that gateway to these resources, you're just so inspired by it. You're not daunted. You just have to go do it.
We're here in Houston, Texas, home to Johnson Space Center, NASA's Center for Human Flight. There's so much cool space stuff here that in 1967, it earned the nickname Space City. We met up with Jim Jeffrey, who works on the Orion spacecraft.
My role is to be the Vehicle Integration Manager for Orion's spacecraft program. Orion is the spacecraft that's going to take humans back to the moon for the first time since early 1970s, and they'll do so on the Orion capsule. Starting with the International Space Station program, we've had a continuous presence in orbit for over 20 years, and we're using that to develop long-duration technologies, understand what it takes to keep humans alive for months in space. And now, this summer, we're going to launch the first Artemis mission. Artemis 1 will be a crewed test flight, could be 4 to 6 weeks long, and what we're going to do is launch the Space Launch System and Orion for the first time and take it out to lunar orbit. We'll test out all the technologies that are needed for safe crew exploration and demonstrate that we're ready to put humans on board on Artemis 2. One of the hardest things about the Artemis program is the integration. All the different pieces coming together at the same time to accomplish one job, launch our astronaut crews to the moon and back. So that requires a lot of integration, coordination, and communication across the country and really across the world with our European partners. They're all contributing to help Artemis be a success.
The Orion spacecraft is very complex. It has thousands of parts, and it's specifically designed for these very complex missions to deep space. So this is a small-scale mock-up of the Orion spacecraft. You can see some of the key elements. The big blue things are the solar panels, so we can provide power in deep space. You see the small squares, those are the windows, so the crew can look out and see where they're going. On top of this would be the launch abort system that jettisons at launch. It would reveal the docking system so we can dock to the gateway and the human lunar lander. On the back end would be the booster, that Space Launch Systems that falls back to Earth once it does its job on launch. It's really a state-of-the-art spacecraft and part of the next era of human spaceflight. Lockheed Martin is the prime contractor to NASA building the Orion spacecraft, but it takes a whole team around the world to make it work. Lockheed Martin has over 2,900 subcontracts with businesses in every state of the country, many of them small businesses. We also have international partners. The Europeans are building the service module. Men and women are working hard all over the country to building the spacecraft, getting it ready to take people to the moon.
It is so cool to be going back to the moon with people after half a century of not being there. ULA is participating in a couple of different ways. We're going to fly one of the early robotic uncrewed missions, something called the Peregrine Lunar Lander, which is really cool in itself because it's the first commercial lander to the moon. And then we're also part of SLS's first missions. We're providing the upper stage, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage for Artemis. So we're just really excited to be both a part of the uncrewed missions and part of the activity leading to the crewed missions when people will go to the moon and put boots in the regolith finally after 5 decades.
The Space Launch System is a very versatile and capable system. It was developed using systems that are derived from the Space Shuttle program. The solid rocket boosters that people are familiar with, the big orange tank in the middle that holds the propellants. The main engines are formerly known as Space Shuttle main engines. So using the development work we've done previously in that flight experience, we're now using them in different ways in order to support a different mission, deep space exploration. So the SLS is capable of launching the Orion spacecraft. It's also capable of developing a cargo configuration where we could put very large payloads into space.
There'll be a space station orbiting the moon. There'll be permanent facilities on the moon. There will always be a continuous human presence on or at the moon, much like the International Space Station today. That means logistics is everything. There's cargo, there's fuel, there's water, there's trash coming back, there's toilet paper and coffee. This is going to be a huge job to support those people who are exploring this really important body right here, just a week away from where you and I are sitting here in our control center.
We're in the operations center, and what exactly goes on in here? Because I imagine on a launch day, we have lots of chairs and computers. They're usually full of people.
They are. There's a person in every chair on every monitor, and this room is actually supporting the mission control center that would be down at the launch site. These are full of engineers. Every part of the rocket has an engineer personally responsible for it, and they're on this during the countdown. They're monitoring telemetry on the pad from their equipment. Wow. They can, on these screens, get all the data for that piece of hardware since the dawn of time. They can make sure everything is good, and if it's not, they'll huddle up in this room and they'll solve problems.
And give me a sense, what would this room look like on Artemis 2 launch day?
You can see the headsets, they'll all be on there. They'll have all kinds of data on their screens. They'll be talking amongst themselves, making sure everybody's comfortable or solving problems. You'll hear comms going back and forth. Like these little devices will allow us to tune into different channels. There's so much happening. It's a giant orchestrated effort.
So many firsts have happened in here, and with the Orion and with the Artemis missions, there's going to be more. Do you ever get used to it?
No, never. So We're at over 140 launches now. We'll be up over 150 here shortly here at ULA. I personally, across my career, have done close to 400 launches. And I'll tell you, it never gets old. It never gets routine. I get butterflies every single time.
Wow.
There's nothing like it.
Well, Tori, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we're in the early stages of space exploration. There's a lot more to learn about how to operate in a deep space environment for similar lengths of time. We're developing now the systems with Orion to take people to deep space exploration destinations and bring them back. So the upcoming Artemis missions will be the early demonstrations of those capabilities, but there's a tremendous future ahead for us to go explore.
My name is Jackie Mahaffey. I am the Chief Training Officer for the Artemis 2 mission, so our first Orion crewed mission. And my job is to lead the development and execution of the training of our astronauts that will be on that mission, as well as the simulations that we will provide for the mission control team and when the mission control team practices with the crew together. All of the astronauts that we'll be taking for our Artemis missions will have had our astronaut candidate training or equivalent if they're an international partner crew member. So we have some baseline that we can expect from them in terms of understanding spaceflight, understanding how teams work cohesively, and then from there we look at what are all the different tasks that the crew is going to have to perform on the mission.
So the Orion spacecraft, this is a big part of their training. Should we take a closer look?
Yeah, let's grab our helmets and head in.
All right.
You can see the 4 seats and the configuration, they have them here. What you may not be able to see, if you look behind you, you can see, are the display units. So these seats here are for our commander and pilot, and they will be, during pre-launch and during launch, monitoring the data coming from the launch vehicle as well as the Orion vehicle, and just understanding everything is going well or communicating with mission control about something that may not be going as planned. First couple missions, Artemis 3 in particular, will be about proving our capabilities to land on the moon and exercising all of the new equipment, new spacesuits we have to go explore the moon. Artemis 4 folds in the gateway, that outpost that will be around the moon. You know, we're going to practice having that as an outpost to support our lunar missions, and we will learn a lot about how we can use an outpost like that to help support our missions to Mars one day.
This is basically a deep space station. It's a much smaller version that will orbit around the moon. It'll allow astronauts to do extended missions above the moon, to and from the moon, and for Orion to dock and return. When they're not exploring the moon or in Orion, they'll be able to do this deep space science that will enable us to further explore deep space.
So once the astronauts are suited up, one of the first things they'll do is come in and get strapped in the seats.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something we can try out?
Yeah, sure.
So how do you get into these seats?
Put your feet up on the footrest. I have a little extra strap with me.
And I mean, now it feels like a very kind of awkward position, but if you're in zero gravity, it won't feel quite so awkward, maybe.
Yeah, although remember, they'll be in this position for launch and entry. This is like the total extent of switches, which if you've ever seen the inside of the space shuttle, it was covered with switches and circuit breakers, and so most things are operated through the display panel.
It is just really cool to think that this is kind of the setup and situation that the next humans are going back to the moon and maybe one day Mars. So that was really cool. Thanks for showing me.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Watch your head. For me, going back to the moon after 50 years means a lot because my generation never saw that happen live. And I grew up knowing the space shuttle and being familiar with it, seeing us be on ISS on the space station for over 20 years. And those things feel very normal. But knowing that this really cool thing happened and never having seen it live, I'm personally really excited about, like, let's see it happen again. And then let's do even more.
It's a big question. How do you decide moon or Mars?
There's really 2 main camps to answer this question. The first camp, of course, is NASA and the Artemis program, with an incremental stop at the moon in order to get to Mars. But that way people can get used to living in space and they have this incremental option. And the other option is straight to Mars.
Straight to Mars, it sounds pretty good to me if it's doable. It's not really a new idea. Robert Zubrin and others actually proposed this in 1991, something called the Mars Direct proposal. And part of it is the idea that Mars is just a very interesting planet to go to, the atmosphere. There's a lot you can do there. You can make the fuel, you can make water, and it sounds like a good place to live. You know, today Elon Musk and others have kind of adopted their own version of it. Elon with SpaceX and Starship, which is the ship they're building to make trips to Mars. So the Mars dream is not dead in general and for NASA as well.
Do we go right to Mars? Do we go back to the moon and then go to Mars? I'm more of a moon first guy, only because it seems, somewhat kind of serendipitous that the moon is there, 2 days away instead of 200 days away. The moon has, a sixth of the gravity of Earth as compared to Mars having a third of the amount of gravity. The moon has no atmosphere, which in some ways can make things easier. Other things makes more challenging.
The moon holds a lot of secrets. We want to go to new places on the moon that we weren't able to explore during the Apollo missions. Places where the sun has never shone, and we may find early parts of the solar system captured in these extremely cold craters around the moon.
While Orion has been built for the Artemis program and these lunar and deep space missions, ultimately we believe it has a place at Mars too. We believe the Orion spacecraft can be used for up to 1,000 days, which is just about how long it would take for a mission to Mars. And Lockheed Martin has this concept called the Mars Base Camp, where it uses Orion as a cornerstone and then adds habitats and other things that are needed to explore Mars. It might be possible someday we need or want to become a multi-planetary, faring species. And along the way, we'll do some interesting science and we'll develop technologies that will help us here on Earth and inspire the next generation.
It seems like the moon was perfectly placed for us to practice, to learn things that will help us go to Mars someday. Now, having said that, it's expensive. And, if you have to make the choice, do I do both? Do I just do one? How much money do I have? Maybe you could make the argument that, bypass the moon and go on to Mars.
Clearly, the real objective was Mars. Mars is where the science is. It's where we're going to discover the truth about the potential prevalence and diversity of life in the universe, and it's where the future is. It's the planet that has on it all the materials needed to support not only life, but human civilization. For us, Mars is the new world. What's the fastest way there? Mars Direct.
And then a journey into tomorrow, a journey to another planet, a manned mission to Mars.
NASA in 1989, the first President Bush called upon NASA to implement a program, return to the moon and on to Mars, and this time to stay. It was the 20th anniversary of the Apollo moon landing, and that's how he celebrated it. And so NASA went off and developed a plan that was gigantic in its cost and schedule. They're making this much more complicated than it needs to be. It's like, designing a school play to make sure all the kids have a part. Great for school play, but when you're talking about tens of billions of dollars, it starts adding up. The concept was immediate, caused a lot of excitement, and it immediately became controversial. There were a lot of people in NASA and even among our competitors who thought this was great. This is a way we can actually get to Mars. Technologically speaking, it was within the realm of our technology in 1990 when we came up with the plan, and it still is. Along comes Elon Musk. Now, he's certainly not interested in doing things to spend money. He's interested in spending money to do things. So he has embraced a version of the Mars Direct plan as the basis for his plan for human Mars missions. The designs of the vehicles are different. They're his own designs. And there are certain aspects of the plan that are different. But it's basically direct flight to Mars, no on-orbit assembly, no need for other orbital infrastructure, and direct return from the surface of Mars using propellant made on Mars. That's Mars Direct. That was the plan that Baker and I laid out in 1990, and that is the plan that Musk has embraced in his own way today. We are most likely to get to Mars this decade. Once Starship becomes operational, Starship uses methane oxygen propellant, and that is why it uses that instead of other possible propellants, because it's the propellant you can make on Mars. Heavy lift vehicles using propellants that could be made on Mars, regularly flying to Earth orbit with payloads comparable to that of a Saturn V moon rocket, but 1% the cost because it's reusable. He's got the transportation system, that's the main thing. We develop everything else. Put this together, a public-private partnership, we could be on Mars before the end of this decade. And that is what I think will happen.
My name is Dr. Shannon Rupert, and I'm the director of the Mars Desert Research Station. The Mars Desert Research Station was built to study what life would be on Mars, how we as humans would not only live, but explore and do science. We're in a true geologic Mars analog. What that means is that you see the same patterns and processes in the geology of the area where the station is set that you see on Mars. The idea is when you put humans on Mars, they can get so much more information than we can get from a single robotic mission.
We asked so many people in the space industry what their dream is for the future of space exploration. Engineers, astronauts, entrepreneurs, historians. It's a great question because there's not just one answer.
My hope is that NASA and the Artemis program can help make humanity be a multi-planet species.
I want to see the space industry get to a point where we can access the infinite resources of space.
Just forget about Moon and Mars. I think we are on the upward swing of more common access to space than we've had previously.
Ordinary people like you and I will live and work in space because our jobs are there and we can have a better life there.
There are so many smart people working on this question, what is the future of space exploration? And the only way that we can realize that future is by dreaming and working together.